And now we start the Hillsborough TPO Transportation Planning Organization ITS meeting. I'll call to order. Before we started, I'd like to introduce introduction of Vishika Roman, who will be the ITS meeting coordinator start October. And let's also welcome her to join us in the future of the meeting.
Thank you, Nick. This is Vishaka Raman. I'm the MPO TPO planner for who will be representing the ITS committee. Thank you.
You're welcome. So now the call to order.
Yes.
So it's go to the next one is about public comments for the minutes. I'm sorry. Hey Johnny, correct me. Maybe
you're right, Nick. So the first item on the agenda is public comment, and so at this time we'll take a look through the list of attendees and see if anyone is a member of the public who wants to say something, and then they have 3 minutes to give a comment. So Priya, do you see any members of the public in the chat box?
No, Johnny.
All right, we'll just give them a second. If anyone from the public is here, you can type something into the chat box if you want to get called on.
Yes, I will do that.
All right, I don't think we have any commenters, Nick.
Okay, so then we move to the second item, review and approval of minutes.
I'll make the motion.
Who is there anybody going to second?
I second it.
I think there's someone in the background. If they can mute themselves, please.
Oh, well, Nick, actually, because we don't have the quorum in person, we're not able to take a motion on this now. We were thinking that it would be better to table it until October so we can have the quorum in person. But if anyone has any comments on the minutes or if they see anything that needs to be changed, we can take care of that between now and the October meeting.
Okay, thank you, Johnny.
I had a one correction. It lists Brandon Campbell as Hillsborough County for the last meeting.
Sure.
Okay, thanks. We'll correct that. Any others?
Oh. Can we move on to the status reports?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So go to the, I thought, okay, so we'll go to item 3, status reports.
I'm sorry?
I said we go to item 3.
Yes, we can.
Reports.
Yes, we can.
Okay.
And I will pull up the presentation in a minute. Can you see my screen?
No, I can see you.
You're good, Vishaka. Go ahead now.
Okay, you should be able to see my screen now, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would like to call upon WhaleMedge for presenting the in-road safety lights solution project here. Whale, are you ready?
Yes, I appreciate it. Do I have access to the presentation or are you going to be moving the slides?
I can move the slides, or if you want, I could request Priya to give you.
Probably be easier if you would be kind. I can move it a lot, instead of keep going. Next slide. There are so many slides.
Priya,
it's
can we?
possible.
Priya,
Yes.
can we get access?
Mhm.
Okay,
I'll take care of that.
thank you. So I'll stop sharing my screen here.
Okay. I don't know why it's not allowing me to do that. So for some reason, I can't have access to the presentation. I'm not sure.
The presentation is on the website of the Plan Hills Pro page. I can do that, or I can still run the slides if you want me to.
Okay, I guess we'll have to go with the slides then. Okay, you can have control. I can't get control. I apologize.
Oh, did you get the request to control, or?
No.
I think Priya, you need to give me the control again, please. Thank you. Can we go ahead with the slides?
Yes. First of all, I want to thank you for allowing us to present to you we are a safety solution. This is a safety solution presentation that's going to be talking about the in-road lights and the use of them. This has been a collective effort from many municipalities and the state of Florida to have a in-road light as a tool to be able to address our safety concerns. I guess we can go to the next slide, please. The nighttime crashes is an international problem for us in the States and really actually throughout the world. And over 54% of the US fatalities happens at nighttime. Next one, please. On a state level, we have roadway departure as a prominent problem. Pedestrian and safety is also a major concern. As we all know, in the state of Florida, we are the #1. And Hillsborough and Orlando area, unfortunately, we also are the #1 in the country in terms of pedestrian safety. Next slide, please. I was trying to avoid the next slide, but we have no choice now. On local levels, municipalities, obviously, we all know that pedestrian safety is an area of concern for us, as I mentioned. Next one, please. In addition to distracted driving as a major problem for us, and next one. And inclement weather at nighttime, visibility becomes almost scarce. So next one, please. And we have our vision with all those challenges to be able to reach Vision Zero. That's really a common thread for all of us. And as you know, the numbers below highlighted in yellow it reflects really the economical and the number of deaths we are dealing with on a yearly basis. So it's a major problem, obviously, for all of us, and it's important for all of us to be able to address as a team. Next one, please. There are many types of crashes that we are dealing with, pedestrians, intersections, lane departures, but the main thread between all of them is that you have speeding drivers, distracted driving, aging road users, and impaired driving. And most of the time, the conventional tools that we currently have are really not getting the job done because we don't know how to communicate with those kind of drivers. And focus is a fact is we have always been trying to give them the message, but I think we're looking at it the wrong way in the fact that we need to look at what the driver sees is what matters. What we tell them is not sufficient, is what they see, what really is important for us. So on the next slide, please. This is a typical vision for the driver. The cone of vision, as you increase in speed, like to 30 miles per hour, as you can see in that light circle, this is what the driver sees. And this is what we need to communicate with the driver. Anything outside that area becomes as a noise, especially when they're trying to focus on the roadway. And if we are dealing with those other types of drivers, this is the area that they see, and this is the area we need to communicate with them effectively to give them a message to be able to know that what they are dealing with hazards ahead or whatever situations. Next slide, please. In addition to the cone of vision is that they have to have sufficient time to be able to stop. At 35 miles per hour, at 45 miles per hour, this is the distance that the driver needs. That's when they actually see the element in front of them. So this distance is very critical because by the time they notice something, it's too late. So we need to have, again, the combination of that area of vision and also sufficient distance for them to stop. Next one, please. So that's why we believe that conventional tools are not getting the job done. And a perfect example is that many reports have been done recently, and conventional tools and design parameters that we're currently using are really not moving the needle. So we really need to start looking for new ways to be able to explore solutions to communicate better with the driver. Next one, please. So innovation is a way to be able to communicate with the driver. That's what we are recommending here. We are looking also for tools that are self-educated. That's really very clear to the driver to know what they are dealing with. There are many other elements we are dealing with here in terms of quick installations, cost-effective, low maintenance, and then we are looking for sustainability. The products that we are going to discuss here and the applications are FDOT approved and METCD compliant. We are proud as a state of Florida. We are the first state in the country to have these kind of tools being approved to be used on our streets and highway. So we are the pioneer state as an effort here. Next one, please. So combining the elements that we just discussed, I want to start first talking about pedestrian communication with the driver. This is that cone of vision. This is what the driver sees, and this is the distance that needs to be at least to be able to stop. So we need to have 250 feet to be able to see that the pedestrian crossing the roadway. As you can see here, like LED enhanced signs or RRPs on the side of the roadway, they are far from the cone of vision, so they don't give the driver sufficient time to react to them and to stop in time. Next one, please. So we're looking at several options here. One option to the left is an activated system that the pedestrian will push a button and the in-road lights will activate with a combination of highlighted signs, RFPs, or flashing beacon, or just in-road lights by themselves. And this is a wire system that is activated day or night. To the right is a highlighted crosswalk system, which is in-road lights that are double-sided white that highlights a crosswalk, and that is done at signalized intersections or stop locations to be able to create better visibility at signalized intersections. These are only activated at nighttime. Next one, please. I guess for this here, there are two videos I was going to show you of the system, but Bishka, I don't think this is working right from your end to be able to activate those videos.
I will have to try it in PowerPoint presentation. I think when I converted it into PDF, it does not, it was not pulling me. Give me a second.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, the presentation, like you said, was was a large file.
Yes, it is, because the videos. Yeah.
Give me a second, it just opens.
Sure. I apologize. I wish I had access to it. I'll make it easier on you.
Oh, no, it's okay. Fine. It's not a problem. I apologize for the delay in the time to open it. But let me quickly advance to this one. I think it was around slide 12, 13, right?
There you go. Let's see.
Oh, can you all see the screen now? Okay, thanks.
So the one to the top, that was in Escambia County that we did the application, and it is an existing RRFP system that we replaced with LED enhanced signs. We added in-road lights. The one to the other video below it It is in the city of in Pinecrest area, and it is a combination with RRFP. That system has been in existence for almost 3 years now. As you can see, this combination, it provides sufficient time for the driver to be able to see the pedestrian crossing, especially when you have many of those signs are like blocked by vegetation or as we talked about, they're not paying attention because they're distracted or texting or whatever the case might be, and they're not really being able to stop in time. So we can go to the next slide, please. This is, as I mentioned, this is the highlighted crosswalk, and we can go to the next one. This is a new idea that we are right now implementing. That's part of the innovation that we're discussing with District 5 in Orlando and central office. We're introducing red in-road lights to as mid-block crosswalks with a combination of HOG system. The one that's and this is the first in the country we're going to be doing that. So that's a new request experiment that we are working with FHWA. And there is about 8 crosswalks. That's on Orange Blossom Road in Orlando that's going to be using this combination. Also, with this combination here, we just got an authorization with the Hillsborough, with the Tampa Expressway authorities on the reversible lanes where the gates are constantly being hit. We are going to be putting in-road lights just like that, but they will activate when the gates go down, and then they will be dark when the gates are up at that time. So this way, hopefully, it will provide a better protection for the gate system. There is a video over here, Bishka, you can play, please, if you don't be kind. This idea, even though this is with the green, this is in a different country that we started this process here. This idea is to be able to look at many applications, like for railroads and for wrong-way applications. So it's endless of possibilities where we can use it, and signalize like for red light runners if we need to use it, school zones. You know, there's many applications we can use it for. But now we're introducing the steady red as an application in the streets, which is an amazing application. Next slide, please. Yeah, that's what I mentioned to you about the combination with the in-road lights, where we are going to have flashing yellow at the beginning, and then steady yellow, and then goes to steady red in combination with the overhead to allow for pedestrians to cross those mid-blocks and Orange Blossom Road. Okay, next one. This is many of the projects that we've done throughout the state of Florida, and many are coming in. We are doing many crosswalk systems because a lot of people see the benefits of having that communication with the driver with the in-road lights as a tool to protect pedestrians. Next one, please. The cost effectiveness, this is just to show a cost comparison between current tools that we are using and the time frame, and then also, of course, what we are talking about with the inclusion of the in-road lights as a system with the cost and the time frame. Next one, please. Bicycle, bike lanes, vulnerable users also, and really we have to be able to eliminate them and provide a better protection for bicyclists when they're on the bike lane at nighttime. Most of the bicycle fatalities happens at nighttime. This one, as you can imagine over here, the white lights are placed in the bike lane, and you can envision a bicyclist with the red tail in between the white lights that you can see from 1,000 feet, and this would provide a better protection, knowing that there is a bicyclist in the roadway. Next one, please. Trails and many other locations that we can be able to highlight for safety and also for elimination. It's attainable to us. Next one, please. Roadway curvature. This is a major problem throughout the country and throughout the state of Florida. Curves, as this particular project here, as you can see, all conventional tools are in existence. We have a guardrail, we have street lights, we have markings, we have signs. There's even speed feedback signs at this particular curve, and yet they still have a problem with drivers hitting the curb and also hitting the guardrail and traveling into some neighborhoods. This is only 30 miles per hour roadway, but when we place our indoor lights in here, and that really provided sufficient distance for the drivers to be able to see the curves and really have solved the problem of communicating, solved the problem of hitting the guardrail. As you can see, the lights are placed inside a travel way. So this creates an illusion to the driver that the road narrows at nighttime. So it helps a lot to be able to see the curve and navigate it easily. Next one, please. This video that we have here, this is the Florida Turnpike. It's mile marker 166. It was installed last year. There's a major problem. This is dark roadway, and the curve has numerous roadway departure crashes. As you can see here, we took this video from half a mile, and we are traveling at 70 miles per hour without the use of our headlights. That's how we can navigate that curve very easily. So it is definitely a very effective way to be able to highlight and show the curve throughout those dark areas. Wrong way application. I'm sorry, you can go to the next one. Oh, no worries. Yeah, that's good. Next slide, please. Wrong way. This is a perfect example of distracted driving, aging driving, or intoxicated drivers. They really can't tell the entrance from an exit in the ramp. It looks almost the same, and potentially they could enter the wrong way. So what our objective here is to be able to create a gate system that would in-road lights that are placed facing the driver, telling them from a distance that this is the wrong way to go, right there in their eyesight. And this application here is very effective because it's active all night long. You don't have to wait until someone is in the zone to communicate with them. It is placed in the drivers in the lanes. And if you go in the right way, you see absolutely nothing. And if you go in the wrong way, you're going to see a bunch of red lights. If you would be kind, the next picture, please. That's how it looks like. Right next to the wrong way signs. It is a preventive way of being active all night long. And this way they can see the entrance from an exit, and it can be used at MA locations. This location, for example, we did it in a rural highway up in Fort Pierce area in East Florida for District 4. And there is someone so dark, and it's a large median. They went the wrong way, and two girls lost their lives. So we placed this gate here to be able to provide a better warning, and that can be seen, as I mentioned, from easy 1,000 feet, 2,000 feet. Next one, please. Roundabouts, even though they are a very effective way of providing a better protection for severe crashes, there's still a lot of problems with people hitting the roundabouts, hitting structures, and traveling too fast into them. So we have placed many roundabouts in the city of Miami Gardens, and this is like a private development, as a matter of fact, that we have placed the roundabouts to be able to guide them and warn them through the roundabout to navigate very easily. Next one, please. How many islands, traffic separators that we can't see at nighttime and also become a hazard. So this is also to be able to eliminate them and to warn vehicles of those areas. Next one, please. Speed humps, speed tables, and as I mentioned already, incident management and railroad crossings, like I mentioned before. So many applications, and really I just wanted to give you a thought of how many applications we can use and what we have used so far. And our main objective, obviously, is to be innovative and trying to warn drivers and reduce crashes. Next one, please. We have been working. This slide says 6 years, but it's been 7 years in the making, and it has been a collective effort because to be able to place solar markers inside a roadway is very challenging, and we need to have products that will be able to withstand. Most importantly, the moisture. That's where really been the failure and the challenging part of having in-road lights. Solar markers has been something that many studies indicated that they are effective tools, but the technology never caught up. So we focus our efforts on trying to go and make technology catch up to it. What we have is that a product that is 1.5 inches in depth that is placed inside the pavement. As you can see, this the black composite cup would become permanent part of the pavement, while the cast aluminum and the module inside of it that houses all the components are can be ejected for maintenance or future milling and resurfacing project. But most importantly is that we have a one-piece module inside to be able to protect from moisture, and that one-piece module can be placed practically in a pool, and it will survive, and it will work out perfectly to protect the components. Next one, please. Durability. This is a test. We can play the video if you would be kind. This is a test that was conducted with the Ohio DOT. We were testing snow plowable just to show you the reliability and the impact. This is after half an hour of installation. As you can see, the pavement was parked, and we hit the units to be able to withstand the force of the snow plow in that time. Next one, please. We have many studies have been done for the use of in-road lights. The two of them are related to us that we are very proud of. The Florida Turnpike, that 1 mile that I show you, the curb delineation, we did before and after study with the cooperation of the Turnpike. And as I mentioned, because the placement of the lights and also the aesthetic appeal for drivers, when they see lights, they kind of look at them and they say, what's going on here? They kind of tend to slow down. And as you can see here, over 70 miles per hour, we slowed them from 38 to 58% of the vehicles actually slow. And overall, there was a 5 miles per hour reduction in speed. So that's definitely attractive calming tool. Another project we did, and District 2 did up in Jacksonville. They have a reverse curve in the neighborhood, and we installed the lights. The 5 years before the installation of our lights, there were 56 total nighttime crashes, and the 3 years after we installed the lights, that's a combination of 3 years, is only 1 nighttime crash. So we are definitely on the right path of saying that we have a tool to help reduce crashes and also hopefully reduce speed. Next one, please. Many references that we can share with you about the benefits of in-road lights. Next one, please. The installation, we have 2 products. The one I mentioned to you, which is solar markers, and then the one for the crosswalks that we use for many applications. Next one, please. This is also a video of the installation. We had to invest into the installation because the process here involves drilling to accelerate. This is actual live operation. So we are drilling within 30 seconds. We drilled the hole to 1 3/4 inches. It's preset. The material is pulverized. The person behind cleans up the debris, and it can be thrown away because it's almost dirt. But if it is in a neighborhood, we can accumulate it, and then they vacuum it. And then the person behind that, at the end, they put the epoxy material. It's a very effective epoxy. I'll show in the next video. And then the unit is placed, and within 15 minutes, you can drive on it. As you can see now in this video over here, another hole has been drilled. Okay, next one, please. This is the epoxy. This is a hole like as being cleaned. The epoxy is a 2-part epoxy, and the unit is place right there, and you have time to be able to adjust it at that time, and then that's it. You're out there. Next one, please. This is a part of the ease of maintenance, is that if we need to eject the unit, we will use an air compressor that we eject inside the unit, and the unit pops up, and we'll be able to go ahead and come back and replace the unit. If you need to manually resurface, which is we've done several projects, they ejected the unit out and just come back and just buy a new cup and place the cup in the payment at that time. You have to record, obviously. This process is, even though it seems easy here, it is definitely not something that a person can vandalize. We haven't had any problems with anyone be able to tamper with the units in the field. Next one, please. So our goal is obviously, is your goal, is to be able to go ahead and address many areas of concerns. We believe that we have throughout the state and throughout the country, we can be able to reduce crashes, and we have many applications that we can attack to be able to go ahead and be innovative and trying to go ahead and reach out to the driver in a more effective way. As we all know, for example, payment shields on the highways has been very, very effective on trying to go ahead and advise drivers to go through those routes. In essence, what we're doing here is really following those footsteps of being able to go ahead and provide a better communication with the driver so they can see and navigate to curves or actually be warned of pedestrians and other elements in front of them. Next one, please. So with that, I would be more than happy to answer any questions. Just want to give you a bird's eye view of the applications of in-road lights.
Thank you, Will. That was a very good presentation. It was very interesting. Can we move on to any questions?
Yeah, Vishaga, this is Achilles. I had a question. What is the longest deployment that you've had so far?
In terms of time?
Yes.
Okay. We have, as I mentioned, we've been working for 7 years, and we have, this is our 3rd generation of lights. So our 2nd generation has been 5 years in the field.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
Johnny has a question.
Thanks. I have 2 questions. I think on one slide you showed an engineering diagram. I couldn't make everything out, but have you paired this with detectors anywhere so that, you know, like a detector on the approach could determine whether or not someone is failing to slow down and then maybe trigger a color change or a pattern change or anything like that?
No, that's a great idea, Johnny. We have discussed this concept with and when we developed with the Florida Turnpike, we connected to the ITS cabinet, and we activated our system to be like they can go steady yellow, flashing yellow, or steady red or flashing red if they wanted to be able to do for incident management. For speed control, definitely we can connect it to any method of activation. Like what we're going to do with the Hillsborough Expressway Authority, with the Tampa Hillsborough Expressway Authority, is that we are going to connect to the gate. So once you tell us to come on, we'll come on. Turn off, turn off. So we haven't done that, but that's definitely one of the ideas. And one of the ideas also that was discussed at one time is to create a pattern of lights that they can flash in consequential order. So this way the driver thinks that they're approaching something that's opposite of what they are. So this way they can slow down. So this is definitely part of the innovative idea that we can explore, but it hasn't been implemented as of yet. But it's endless possibilities. But this is exactly what we're trying to do, is how we can use that tool to really effectively address our concerns, and that's going to be really it's up to our creativity, in my opinion.
Cool, thank you.
And you said you have another question, or I'm sorry.
I was going to turn it back to the committee members before I ask another one, but yes, I do have something else. All right, if no one else has anything. So while you were talking, I had the opportunity to go on the Crash Modification Factor website, and I didn't see any research available on the effectiveness of this. Do you guys have plans to commission studies that will tell us what % crash reduction might be achievable with these in-road safety lights? I know in one of the earlier slides, you mentioned that you've got some before and afters, but is there plans for the company to do like a commissioned blind study or something like that?
That's a very good question too. At the same time, Johnny. First of all, we can't, as a company, do any studies. Obviously, it has to be done by a governmental agency to be independent. And so that's number one. Number two is, as you know, those studies will take at least 5 years. We have to have 3 years in the making. Now, what I've done is if we look at them, let's say, if we look at RPMs, there is, and I can send you a slide of that if you wish, because I've done a lot of research on this. There is a crash modification factors for RPMs. And if you review it at that time for reflective pavement markers, especially around curves. And right now with the RPMs, if you are traveling on a low ADT, very low traffic on that roadway, the actual crashes increase by 20% on average. And if you travel in a roadway which has RPMs, has reflectors in it, and if you travel on a roadway where it has a higher ADT traffic with more traffic, the crashes are reduced by 20%. And it really supports common sense, is the fact that when you're traveling on a curve by yourself, you can't see the curve and you can't stop in time. While if you have a vehicle in front of you that's highlighting the curve in front of you, is going to give you sufficient time to be able to see the curve and you can follow it safely. And these numbers are facts. What we're doing here on a curve, like you saw in that video, is actually we are simulating a vehicle in front of us. And providing that guidance for the driver to be able to see that curves ahead. And this way, I truly believe that mathematically, we have a 40% reduction on the curves, and so far the numbers have exceeded that. But mathematically, it's proven that we have a 40%. And if you look at the crash modification factors comparison in that table for urban and for rural on curves, and you're going to look at the numbers, and it's going to give you 40 to 46% in the actual difference between the two. The second element, which is extremely important, is finally the MUTCD made a change. The MUTCD this year, and that's what's been taking place over here, is that it's saying, listen, we need to use common sense. We can't sit down and deal with numbers because that's not working. And this is what we're doing here, is that anytime we're adding any illumination or any guidance for the driver or pedestrians or anybody else, we are definitely adding another safety feature. So it definitely supports common sense that we are doing something that's going to create a safer environment. To quantify that over time, that's going to require years, obviously, to be able to determine. But the fact is, we are going to reduce crashes. We are going to be able to provide a better indication, better illumination, and safer environment for everyone to be able to travel or to be on the roadways. And that's to be determined. But that's, in the meantime, we just can't sit still without doing something. And I think what we're doing, unfortunately, is not really moving the needle. And that's why the conventional tools, even though we're all trying our best, obviously, and trying the best that we can, it's still, the numbers are still consistently the same. So we've got to do something, and I think this is going to be able to help us. And it seems the indications of what we've seen so far supports the fact that we're providing a better warning and guidance for the drivers.
Yeah, no disagreement from me. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Brian, go ahead, please.
Hey, just wondering, on the warranty, it showed a 2-year and a 5-year. Just was wondering what the difference is there.
Well, it is the DOT, because we have done it's a new technology, obviously, for all of us. The system with the DOT right now for section 654, which is for the in-road lights, and that's for the crosswalks, it's 2 years by the specs. Since this is a new product, DOT gave the options that you can purchase an item for 2 years, or you can purchase an item for 5 years, a longer period. That's ultimately all electronic devices that we have right now. It's really a 2-year warranty because we are dealing with so many elements in the field. But we have kind of prorated the rate in terms of how much a unit will cost, and it's in the DOT APL statewide contract to allow for the 2 years or the 5 years. It's up to the agency if they want to invest more money and kind of for the 5-year coverage for replacement of product if needs to be.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Are there any other questions? I have a question, Maj.
Yes,
I was
ma'am.
wondering if for the pedestrian crossing at the crosswalks, you had a red light controlled signal, right? So how does that interfere with the signal timing? Because it's like the RRFBs, and then you have a red light enforced, so people have to stop. So do you think that interferes with the signal timing for the cars?
No, the way we are doing our system, we are using an interface to be able to, like an interface with an LED driver. So what happens is when we don't use our controller to be able to control the lights. So if the signal controller states that, okay, turn the lights on red, then our system will turn on red. When it goes to dark, it goes to dark. If you want us to go to amber or yellow, then we can go to that at that specific time. So it is really a kind of like we're like a kind of on demand. You tell us to turn on and off, that's what's going to happen, and that's what we're going to be doing with the expressway, the reversible lanes. Right now, you only have the gate with the 3 flashing, or I don't know, 3 or 4 flashing reds on the gates. What we're going to be is just we're going to be steady red, and when they turn on, we just come on. We don't put any timing in our system. So this way there will be no overlap or any indication. And the same thing we're going to be doing with the Hawk system combination with the city of Orlando, with the District 5 in Orange Blossom. The lights are going to come on when the controller of the Hawk system says come on, and whatever color that we need to be able to do, yellow or red.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, I'm not seeing any comments in the chat box, so thank you, Maj. And Nick, do you want to introduce the next presenter?
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Johnny, I cannot see any of the agenda from here. Okay. The next one is Smart City Master Plan Update. Lee Wodak.
Thank you, Nick. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Lee, are you ready?
I am. Are you happy to share the slides? Thank you.
I'm just opening it up. Right.
Awesome, thank you. So thank you for the opportunity to come back to the committee and update you all on the Smart Cities Mobility Plan. It's been a short while since we presented on the project scope. So this presentation, I'll just do a brief recap on the scope itself. I'll share some of the output from the discovery phase of the project. I'll update you on the analysis phase and also on the next steps. Next slide, please. So why did we start on a mobility plan? It really builds on the previous ITS master plan. It was somewhat outdated. It's a few years ago since it was updated. So this is really an evolution of that. And it's really to explore how we can utilize emerging and existing technologies to support some of the outcomes regionally. To unlock the benefits of those smart city applications that enhance mobility overall, and also what's come through strongly as part of the project as well as how we consider equity around mobility as well. We'll be developing a clear 5-year vision and supporting roadmap to achieve that vision, and it's all geared around focusing on the achievement of the 2045 long-range transportation plan. Next slide, please. So as I touched on around the long-range transportation plan, there's 5 program categories, as you are aware: good repair and resilience, vision zero, smart cities, real choices when not driving, and enabling major investment and economic growth. And the 2 phases of the project, as I touched on the kind of introduction, was really around the discovery and analysis phase, and also then ultimately that roadmap that I mentioned. If you go to the next slide, please. So the discovery phase comprised of 2 main parts. Firstly, horizon scanning and an industry literature review. We looked at 100 smart cities initiatives and over 30 guidance plans as part of this process. And we also looked locally as well, developed a state of the practice, a real baseline understanding of the technology deployments that exist within the Tampa Bay area. And as part of that overarching approach, we utilized a technology toolkit, and we segmented the toolkit into 3 main areas. So existing technology solutions that we have already today, existing technology solutions that we don't have, and then new and emerging technology solutions as well. So what we've done throughout is, as we've been reviewing some of these technologies and solutions, we've mapped those against a technology toolkit, but also to the 5 program categories as well. You go to the next slide, please. The analysis phase is really the phase that we're into at the moment. So there's a desire to map all the current and planned technology deployments within the GIS system. And we really welcome the support from partner agencies around the region to be able to provide us information around those systems, the shape files, so we can get a single view of those technologies. We have been having a series of workshops with MPO staff and key staff from partner agencies. We've issued various different questionnaires. We've had meetings with school groups, and last week was the quarterly Tampa Bay Smart Cities Alliance, where a big part of that agenda was about understanding what projects and initiatives we could consider as part of the roadmap, and I'll touch on to that a little bit later. And then the final piece of the analysis phase would be around considering those projects as part of the project prioritization metrics to see where we really need to focus our activity in the near term. Thank you. Next slide. So as I mentioned, we've done a comprehensive review of smart city plans, programs, guidance documents, 100 cities, 30 plans were all reviewed, and these have been summarized in a discovery phase and state of the practice report. And we've also created a number of fact sheets as well that summarize some of the key technologies that we came across through case studies, and also considering the alignment to the 5 program categories as well. Thank you. Next slide. So as we looked at those 100 plans, those smart city initiatives, we mapped the frequency of occurrence of those common elements. And existing and emerging technologies, collaboration and infrastructure were really the top 3 elements that were addressed in both kind of the planning and the guidance sources. There was also, the reviews also demonstrated that there's less focus on investment criteria, the actual funding plans, and planning duration within smart cities as well. However, over 50% of the sources dedicating a huge focus to strategic and transportation priorities. So a real view around kind of alignment of why they were going to be doing some of these initiatives. If you go to the next slide, please. To help us as well, we also identified a number of special considerations. We did this in collaboration with the partner agencies. We brainstormed some of these to not only look at kind of some of the more general issues and opportunities that came from the review, but specific ones that we might need to consider locally. I did touch on equity, but others that we needed to consider as part of the review would be cost, risk, dependencies, benefit cost ratios. So when we were looking at these 100 smart cities, we also looked at the emergence, the occurrence of some of these special considerations. And as you can see from the graph, alignment with goals and objectives, equity and implementation timeframe were the top 3 as addressed in terms of the occurrence. And there was a moderate significance of the understanding of risk associated with the technologies in some of the smart city guidance documents as well. Return on investment was another element addressed in some sources as an element to consider, but not utilized in many of the plans. Another interesting finding was that despite the importance of understanding benefit cost ratio of technology deployments, it was not really addressed in many of the plans or guidance documents that we found. As you can see, 0%. Thank you. Next slide. So we took the total view from the city reviews and the guidance plans and compared that with some of the local initiatives. And some of the local initiatives that we reviewed were examples, so like the Tampa Bay Smart City Alliance and the 3 core programs around mobility as a service, reimagining infrastructure, the regional data platform, but also other initiatives such as the Tampa Hillsborough Expressway Authority CV pilot, just to name a few. So we looked at the comparison, the occurrence of those smart cities elements within the local plan compared to the locals. So the analysis demonstrated similar trends between local and global reviews in smart cities elements around existing and emerging technologies and collaboration. They were the most frequently addressed elements locally as well. Performance measurement, even though not so frequent, it kind of aligned with the global trends too. Analysis and reviews also indicated that Hillsborough MPO's greater focus on investment criteria to fund the funding plans and strategic transportation priorities when compared to other local practices as well was positive. So there's a real strong alignment in terms of some of the comparable occurrences between what's happening globally and nationally with what's happening locally. Infrastructure, planning duration and benefits ranked lower locally as well, based on the material that we reviewed. So again, kind of a mirror image to some extent of what's happening globally with locally. And the next slide looks at some of those special considerations that I mentioned earlier. And you can see from the slide locally, costs, dependencies, return on investment actually had a stronger focus than some of the global and national perspectives, as well as the alignment on goals and objectives as well. Benefit cost ratio stands out again, but also equity. Based on the reviews that we did, equity was less evident locally than globally than what we found. In addition to the Smart Cities Review and the special considerations around the elements, we also reviewed specific strategies and technologies utilised nationally and globally in Smart Cities works. And the intent of this was really to develop a comprehensive inventory of strategies and technologies, identify and develop a comprehensive list of examples under each of those and best practices from around the world, and map the local efforts against those technology categories. We identified 14, and they ranged from strategy and technology categories 14. They included a little bit from what we've just heard around kind of smart lighting solutions, but also smart public services and infrastructure, as well as some of the enabling strategies such as citizens engagement and funding programs. Next slide, please. I couldn't share on the slide the extent of the technology mapping, but as I mentioned in terms of the scope overview, we've reviewed against the 14 criteria example technologies and strategies. We've mapped those in terms of, is it existing today? Do we have it? Are we not using it? But also then done a benefits assessment looking at the 5 program categories to see the alignment between that initiative and the benefit it could create locally. There is a body of work in the Horizon scanning and the state of the practice that includes the detail analysis that I've just given a high-level overview of, as well as the depth around the technology mapping exercise as well, and as well as the fact sheets that I mentioned that give examples around some of the technology deployments, the case studies, and the benefits that they could deliver. And I'm sure we can make that available to the partner agencies, committee members as part of this exercise. So that really talks about kind of just bringing the committee members up to speed on where we were on the discovery phase. In terms of the analysis phase, I referenced, if we can go to the next slide, please. I referenced the need to generate project ideas to feed the prioritization matrix that would drive the roadmap. And I also mentioned the Alliance meeting that we had last week, and we asked 2 questions of the attendees. I think there's about 35 to 40 people on the meeting last week. And the 2 questions that we asked was, if you had $10 million and you had to make improvements regionally, but only to existing capabilities, what would you do? And then secondly, the same question, but only if you could add new capabilities. And a number of project services and activities were identified. And Nick, I don't know if it's okay to kind of have an open discussion now as part of this slide, but I'd really welcome feedback from the committee members around the projects that are listed to the right-hand side of the slide. Just very kind of briefly, are these the right ones? New initiatives, is anything missing? Is there anything that we should be considering as a project team that needs to be added to that list as part of the overall approach? Would that be okay?
Yeah, I think it's okay. if anybody has any comments, any questions.
Yeah, if I can chime in for a second, Lee, we had a really good conversation at the Smart Cities Alliance meeting last week. To put it another way, we're really kind of asking you, like, if we gave you a blank check, or not a blank check, but if we gave you a check for $10 million with nothing in the memo line, how would you spend it to make this area a smarter city? And in addition to the committee members, we're hoping to get feedback from some of the audience as well. I see Joe's in here, David, some others. You all attend the Smart Cities Alliance pretty regularly, so you might be aware of what's going on across the region and nationally as well. So anyone who's on the call, feel free to chime in and let us know what you would do with $10 million.
Absolutely. Thanks, Johnny.
How about you, Nick? Do you want to go first?
I think to make a smart city, one thing is that you have to coordinate signals, pin markings, signs, and other like the transit. Somehow you can integrate them together. Basically, another thing is, yeah, for the CV connected vehicles to in some kind of integration with those elements together, so the people when they have a trip, so they know what the travel time going to be, what is the best route they can do, they can pick, so to reduce their travel time and also improve the travel safety. I think these are those elements that you should look at really hard. That's my opinion.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Seemed like Brian was itching to go next. Brian, you have any ideas?
Sure. No, I was just going to make the comment, and obviously I'm an arterial management guy, but yeah, a regional operating system, improving the system and bringing it into one regional system is what I think would have the most impact on existing. And, again, on new capabilities, I would focus on connected vehicles, everything. I love all the emerging technologies, but, there's a lot that, we don't know, right? And we don't necessarily want to put a whole lot of effort and funding into that to make the biggest impact.
Cool, thanks. Anyone else? Madge, do you want to chime in and talk about in-road safety lights?
I apologize. I'm sorry. Yeah.
I was just assuming that you were going to advocate for in-road safety lights.
Oh, yeah, no, that's the fact is that's another tool that we wouldn't even discuss, is to be able to have the ability to communicate with the vehicles for connected vehicles and for autonomous vehicles in the future, because we can have the ability to house like infrared or GPS technologies to be able to really show crosswalks and other areas that we need to be able to get the vehicles to communicate with us, and actually just only rely on cameras like what we are doing right now with the current vehicles. Because the fact is the auto technology or the auto industry is far ahead of us in terms of what we have for the infrastructure. So hopefully this the in-road lights will be a tool to be able to improve infrastructure communication.
Thanks. And I'm seeing in the chat that we have some suggestions. Signal timing coordination with consideration for PEDs, cyclists, and transit, or providing new signal technology for bikes, similar to what they have in the Netherlands. Also, ways of soliciting real-time feedback from the public about infrastructure maintenance needs and issues of design. So feel free to continue commenting on this, but I think we're going to move to the second question that we wanted to hit as well. So the first question that we just asked was about how you would allocate or invest $10 million to enhance existing capabilities. Now we want to get you to exercise your imagination a little more and talk about or think through how you would invest $10 million, but only investing it in new capabilities. So let's open up that question. Nick, do you want to start again? Or Jeff?
Sure. For that part, I think the major thing is that intelligent technology applied to those traditional transportation tools, such as the freeway information system. And right now, I don't know how that tied in with the ground, the local surface, the street. For example, if we have traffic really congested on Interstate 275 or Interstate 75, then we should, the parallel, the local street, major, either maybe collectors or minor arterial street, for those signals on those streets, I think should be tied in somehow, tied in with the interstate congestion system. So when you have congestion, you find out you should know that to trigger timing changes when you congested on the interstate. So I think that somehow we should invest it to look at it.
All right, thanks, Nick. We're actually running short on time, so I'm going to encourage anyone with an idea to type it into the chat box or email either myself or Lee. If you have a really good idea, we'd love to hear it.
Excellent, thanks, Johnny. Some really good additions there that we can add to the project list and prioritization. If we move on to the next slide, it takes us quite nicely to the prioritization criteria. So as a team, we've built a prioritization matrix, and you can see a number of factors that we're going to review around the alignment of these projects. So we've got specifically the alignment to the goals and objectives within the 2045 LRTP, and then really basing on the learning from the discovery process and looking at those smart cities, the guidance plans, the local initiatives. We've identified another set of criteria as well. So cost, implementation, timeframe, impact on equity, dependencies, risk, BCR, and the overall strategic value. And we'd really welcome people's feedback on those factors, those criterias. I don't know, Johnny, if we've got time to do that now, or we'll ask for feedback by the email as well. I'm not sure on time.
Yeah, Lee, I think a follow-up might be more appropriate because it's something that they're probably going to need to think through and take a little bit more time on.
Yeah, there's a lot there, absolutely. So we can make sure that's provided to folks as well. And then the final slide is really the next steps. So we need to complete the capture of the project ideas. We'll be undertaking the project prioritization, developing the high-level roadmap around that vision and the 5 years. We really need to complete the GIS shapefiles capture as well, so we can get this holistic view of the technology deployments around the region. And then a final regional stakeholder workshop to share the findings, both of the discovery phase, but also the analysis and the roadmap as well. So that's kind of the background of where we come from on the scope and the discovery and the next steps. And like I said, thank you for the opportunity to be able to come back and update the committee and all the attendees on the project. And as Johnny said, if any questions or queries or any inputs, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee Hudak. So we can go to the next.
Hopefully, we can move on to the next presentation, Nick.
Yes, the next one is USB 41, Tampa Street Integrated Corridor Management Project. Edward Apperson.
I'm opening the presentation. All right, is Ed ready?
I am ready.
Thank you. I hope you can see the screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. You go to the presenter mode. All right, Ed, I'm ready.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. As Nick explained, my name is Ed Albritton. I am District 7 ITS Project Manager, and I thank you for the opportunity to present on this exciting, not only project, but as this brief presentation will explain, possibly full-blown ICM initiative. You can go ahead and go on to the next slide. So hopefully most of the audience at least somewhat recognizes this particular slide. There's a couple of additions that separate it from just a true TB Next graphic, which is what it is. We've actually added a couple of our bigger projects over on I-75 to this as well, the I-75 and Big Bend interchange, which is not a full-blown DDI. It's going to be kind of a hybrid. And we've also included the I-75 and MLK, which will be a diverging diamond interchange project. As important as TB Next and these other projects are to the region and regional traffic management, they're clearly not going to give us all the tools we need, to address the issues and incidents that we're going to be faced with on our networks. And that gets us into the conversation of integrated corridor management. Next slide, please. And much like, the freeways being managed in a silo is not going to be very effective. Arterial management is much the same way with spheres of influence that massively overlap each other. It really takes an integrated management approach, for regional traffic management, both in the traditional sense and in the wider version of ICM, which this slide shows you sort of broadens that scope out to include, other modes of transportation aside from just passenger vehicles. Changing the focus from just moving vehicles to moving multiple modes of transportation, moving towards mobility as a service mindset. Next slide, please. These are just some broad strokes ICM benefits. A lot of this might be redundant to some of the audience. Hopefully reducing vehicle hour delay, improving travel time reliability through the metrics of planning travel time index and travel time index. And of course, the ultimate goal should always be to improve the overall safety of the region. Next slide, please. And so now I'll get into the portion of the presentation where I explain why this is not necessarily just about the Florida Avenue project. It could very well be, because a lot of this is still being actively discussed within the department. We've still got some requests that we're waiting to hear responses on. So it's possible that these ICM corridors, which are on this map all by FPID and the main corridor themselves, still do roll out a single project by single project. But when the conversation of stimulus funds started getting brought up and stimulus worthy projects, we started discussing the idea of combining these ICM corridors together into a single project with the idea that not only are we going to get a better, hopefully, economy of scale on the design portion or the RFP development portion of it, you're going to get better consistency because it's a single firm writing each RFP. And given that these scopes are relatively the same, I mean, there's some nuance to every corridor, so they will be slightly different depending on the needs and what other active projects have already completed on these corridors. But yeah, we're hoping that we can package these all together as a one project and roll it out together. Another thing you'll notice is there is some green sections on here that don't exactly match the current limits of these projects as they're in our system, as they're in the work program. Looking at this regionally, we've realized and studying some of the other projects that are going on, that it might make sense to extend some of those limits, and that's what you see indicated by the green on this particular map here. Next slide, please. Once again, this is information that might be a little bit redundant to this audience. ICM clearly has a focus on field intelligence. Some of the different systems that we will be deploying on these corridors, both Florida, if it goes out by itself, and of course, all of them otherwise, are like I said, items that you guys should recognize, if not by acronym, by name. Some of these will be getting roadside units, controller upgrades, which was one of the recommendations for Lee's presentation, just to get us to that ATSPM signal controller level, which for those not familiar with that term, advanced traffic signal performance metrics, just higher density data. You're going to be able to make more decisions based off of this information than essentially legacy metrics that used to be tracked, corridor travel time, those sorts of things. Opens up a lot more opportunities to look at your timings and truly optimize them, as opposed to just, like I said, trying to maximize the throughput. Bluetooth technologies, of course, will be deployed. Certain corridors, depending on, strategic importance, will be outfitted with blank out DMS signs for diversion, trailblazing, the type stuff. And of course, where we can, we want to try to get everything on fiber optic communications unless it's cost prohibitive to do so. Next slide, please. And so this is just another example of what we anticipate, being able to provide to the motoring public. Most people don't realize it, but with specific enough information, there may be a better choice to take by day or by time of day. We know it's by time of day, clearly with AM and PM, but some of the nuances of, this particular route being better for this particular day or these particular conditions, that information is a little bit tough to get to, just given the current metrics that we have, to measure these corridors. Next slide, please. Two of the major projects that we got going on that are very similar to this and are going to require a massive amount of coordination, and we're hoping that our ICM corridors, irrespective of how they actually get put on the street, hopefully we can fill in whatever gaps these two important projects, both for the city and for the district, are going to leave, so we can have one cohesive system that all functions together, hopefully without any redundant efforts. But yeah, that's 3D level chess at this point. Next slide, please. This is just a quick little breakdown of the different types of devices that are needed on the individual corridors. And as you could see, they do vary drastically, and that has, a lot to do with what's going on those corridors to date, and what needs to be done moving forward. Next slide. This should go without saying, but we've also got some long-term decisions that still need to be made when it comes to ICM. We've got some sister districts. District 5 is already a little bit farther ahead in this process than we are, so they do have an instance of decision support system that we could develop for our own utilizations, or we could come up with a District 7 specific decision support system. And of course, irrespective of both of those steps, the easiest one is just the basic ITS and signal device control, which we'll get from upgrading these corridors. But that's really sort of the bottom of the pyramid. We want 2 and 3, 2 or 3. Next slide, please. So these are just some rough costs, and please don't take any of the numbers you see in this presentation as being in stone. These are all very, very broad strokes. This is still decisions being made on the fly, and so we haven't really got it drilled down to the nth degree. So this is kind of what we're anticipating if we get to roll it out as an ICM project for the region. These are the rough numbers that we have thus far. Next slide. Once again, take these dates with a grain of salt. This is us just trying to project, where these numbers are going to fall. But once again, that's all going to hinge on some of the responses we get back to requests. So we had originally requested to procure each one of these ICM corridors independently as an adjusted score design build. When we started the conversations about the stimulus funds and combining the projects, we were requesting to change that procurement methodology to a low bid design build, mainly for scheduling purposes, just because on a low bid design build, you're not required to go through quite as many steps to award the project. There are no ATCs. Some of them don't even have page turns. So we were just trying to make those schedules match for when the stimulus funds would be here and ready, and versus the difference between an adjusted score and low bid design build. That request was denied, so we are still going to have to do adjusted score. We're going to, I think, minimize the rounds of ATCs that we have to try to truncate that procurement somewhat. But these are the numbers that we've come up with thus far. Next slide. Oh, and that is the end of my presentation. And once again, I realize it didn't focus heavily on Florida for a couple of reasons, that the changes that are possible that I've mentioned, and also we just don't have a lot of specificity about the corridor itself. We're actively working on the RFP and concept plans now, which of course these dates are tied into that. So yeah, I guess we can open up to any questions. I did not put a question slide on there, but I don't want that to give the impression that I won't take questions. Be happy to.
Yeah, they are a very good project. Ed. Any questions from the committee? Yeah, Ed, actually, I have a question. I saw you put a lot of for the travel time measurement, such as a Bluetooth, but I didn't see any volume collectors. For what device are you going to use to collect the traffic volumes?
That I guess depending on what type of detection system is on the corridors.
Yeah, I saw you put all the Bluetooth on those corridors.
Well, I mean, Nick, right now we're having discussions about, we do want both stop bar detection and system detection. Right now we're in the middle of the debate of, whether or not that can be accomplished with a single device. And if not, what are the cost ramifications to that? What is your mid-block detection going to be. My own professional experience is that doing both, signal control detection and mid-block or system detection with a single device mounted on a mast arm at the stop bar is very difficult. I'm not saying it's not possible, and I've been out of the signal game for over 3 years now since I've been with the department, but it is a question that we are looking into, essentially just to make sure that we word this RFP correctly, to make sure that we get a device that can do specifically what you're saying. Not only do we want to control these signals with it, but we do want to be able to keep good data on the corridor itself as well. So it's not called out specifically, but it is a part of the conversation, and it won't be left out of these corridors.
Yeah, just all we know that the Bluetooth only collect the travel information, PPI, PTI, all that.
Sure. And those will be put out irrespective of other detection. That's kind of a separate subsystem that's measuring travel time, and that's its purpose. We'll be deploying other devices to do the counts like you're talking about.
Okay. And another thing, is this system tied into the interstate, the congestion system? Say, for example, if the interstate is congested, it then automatically trigger the signal timing changes for those arterial streets?
Automatically, I would say, at least initially, no. There's almost certainly going to have to be a human actor somewhere in that workflow right now to get that arterial to interstate sort of change that you're talking about. Long term, yeah, I think that is the horizon goal for sure, is to have this all be one homogeneous system that's working together. And that the problem is just getting all of these different systems to function together to get you that seamlessness that you're looking for. So on this phone call, we've got the City of Tampa, Hillsborough County, DOT. That's at least 3 different, central operating systems. NTCIP compliance is only going to get you to a certain level of functionality. But yeah, I guess a shorter winded answer would be, yes, that is our intent long term. I don't think that's going to be the condition initially when we first start bringing these corridors online. I still think it's going to take some operator input to facilitate those changes, but I think that is the long-term ICM goal.
Very good, thank you.
Do you have any questions?
Johnny's got one.
Ed, do you think that the stimulus money is going to be enough to pay for the majority of these corridors, or are you going to look for other grant sources? ATC MTD comes to mind, since you all got the I-4 frame funded a couple of years ago.
Well, I can tell you that my personal preference is that it fully covers, because I don't really want another grant, honestly. It's a lot of paperwork that comes with that. We think that it's going to be enough, but at my level, I don't really have any idea how that overall number is getting parsed out, to see what goes with what. And I guess some of that would probably depend on how enticing, we make this look. I think that, and I guess one thing I probably should have mentioned that really kind of was the catalyst for the combination conversation was the fact that, if stimulus funds get here early enough and we're able to get all these done before, we can have these corridors outfitted and use them for our major construction projects that are a part of Tampa Bay Next, the 60 West Shore Interchange, the DTI. I mean, those that are going to drastically alter traffic patterns. We feel like it would be a boon for the region if we could have these corridors already outfitted and leverage these devices and subsystems, to try to manage the situation that those projects are going to cause.
All right, thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
All right, I don't see any further questions on the chat also. Can we move on? Anybody else has any questions?
So even though can move to the next. Is it 2021 Title 6? And well, I cannot read. Can you blow up a little bit? Zoom.
Sure, sorry about that. Is it better? Title 6 and non-discrimination plan.
Okay, all right. Okay, now, yeah. Yeah, 2021 title, yeah, is Title 6 and the non-discrimination plan. And Joshua Barber and Diane Lazaris, TPO staff. Okay.
All right, I will open up the presentation and over to them.
All right, go ahead, ladies and gentlemen.
Was it by any chance moved, Joshua? Josh, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, hold on.
I think the presentation looks like I'm unable to open it from my end. Let me see if I can open it from the website. If not, let's see if I can open this. Yep, it's here. All right, is this good enough for you or?
Yeah, that'll do the trick. Perfect. All right. Hey, everybody. Josh Barber, TPO staff. I'm joined by Dana Lazarus, also Plan Hillsborough staff as well. We're here to provide an update on 2021 Title VI and non-discrimination plan. Next slide, please. Just to give a little bit of a background, the TPO is required to adopt a Title VI and non-discrimination program in accordance with federal law as a recipient of federal dollars. The last plan was updated in 2018, and an update every 3 years is considered best practice. So given the protests against racial injustice and the continued push for equity by the agency as a whole, executive leadership tasked staff this year with expanding the non-discrimination plan to include the activities of the Planning Commission and Plan Hillsborough as a whole, which really works out because the Planning Commission ultimately is a beneficiary of federal dollars. The agency has a staff services agreement with the TPO where they agree to comply with Title VI and related non-discrimination authorities, and there's a significant amount of shared staff between the TPO and the Planning Commission, where the staff of the TPO or the transportation planning staff for the Planning Commission. And so we share a lot of services together. And so it makes sense for us to, as an agency, comply with civil rights laws, regulations, and executive orders across the board. Next slide, please. And these civil rights authorities, these acts, first are Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, and national origin. The Rehabilitation Act in 73, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability and requires accommodations, therefore. The Highway Act adds sex as a protected class. The Age Discrimination Act added age. The Civil Rights Restoration Act clarified congressional intent about what agencies were required to comply with Title VI. And then, of course, the Americans with Disabilities Act in 1990, which further expanded protections and ensured inclusion of disabled people in all aspects of life in this country. In addition, there's several executive orders which further compliance with Title VI, including the executive order on environmental justice, which requests that federal agencies ensure participation of low-income and minority communities, and that they consider the potential for disparate impacts or disproportionate burdens on those same communities. The executive order on limited English proficiency further requires agencies receiving federal dollars to ensure that their programs are accessible to people who have limited proficiency in English. And then there are subsequent regulations to carry out these acts and orders issued by the U.S. Department of Transportation and its modal agencies. Next slide, please. And so our basic non-discrimination assurances, what we state to the public, to FDOT, to the federal government, is that we will not discriminate or exclude people from participation in, deny people the benefits of, or retaliate against anyone who, on the basis of race, color, national origin, sex, gender, sexual orientation, age, income, religion, family status, or disability. And to achieve this, we designate a civil rights officer or Title VI liaison, which is me. We participate in training offered on Title VI and other non-discrimination requirements. We have a process to collect demographic data and map demographic groups across Hillsborough County, and have methodologies to evaluate the impacts of our plans and our projects and ensure that our plans and our projects do not disproportionately burden low-income and minority communities. We also take steps to ensure that we provide meaningful access to people with disabilities, to people with limited English. And then there's some also like more legal sort of background kind of processes, like ensuring that these clauses are in our contracts and that we have a complaint process in place to process allegations of discrimination against the agency. Next slide, please. And so the purpose of our 2021 Title VI and non-discrimination plan is to demonstrate both the TPOs and the Planning Commission's compliance with non-discrimination authorities and regulations, but also above and beyond that to further the intent of those authorities and advance equitable processes and just outcomes within the agency itself. Next slide, please. And so I want to give a little bit of an outline of this report. It hasn't been released yet, but it will be in the next few weeks. But kind of what you can expect to see in it is an overview of our Title VI and non-discrimination components, so what's required, and an overview of how we've incorporated the principles and requirements of Title VI and non-discrimination into the TPOs and the Planning Commission's respective program areas over the past 3 years. And those three sections primarily demonstrate our compliance with these non-discrimination authorities. And the next few sections seek to advance equity and just outcomes above and beyond federal regulations. So that includes us developing an equity framework or a definition for equity to help better understand the topic and to it was used to inform this planning process as well. We took a long look at the history of discriminatory planning in Hillsborough County, which ultimately, in part, resulted in stuff like the 1964 Civil Rights Act. We also conducted a public engagement process to better understand disparate access to community elements across demographic characteristics, but also to better understand the perceptions of discrimination across our county. And then to kind of tie all this together, we used all this information to create recommendations for both Plan Hillsborough as an entire agency, but also the TPO and the Planning Commission to advance equitable outcomes. Next slide, please. And so I'm going to dive a little bit into our non-discrimination components. Component one is a community overview and maps. The Federal Highway Administration and USDOT require us to compile a demographic profile of the county and map the locations of a variety of protected groups. On the right, you can see a breakdown of these various groups, both in the US, in the state of Florida, and Hillsborough County. And we also did a series of community maps showing the same. And we used two primary methodologies to map our communities. That is dot density, which one dot is equal to so many persons or so many households. And then we also use a threshold methodology to identify discrete locations of populations where there's a high concentration of a particular demographic group. And we use the top quintiles of block groups to identify that. Next slide, please. And here's an example of some of those maps. These maps show race and ethnicity. The one on the left is a dot density map showing both race and ethnicity, where white people are shown in blue, black people are shown in green, Hispanic folks are shown in orange. And then the maps on the right are a threshold map showing racial minority groups. That is anyone non-white, non-Hispanic. And then on the further to the right is also a threshold map showing our ethnic minority or Hispanic and Latino population as well. Next slide, please. And then, yeah. No, that's okay, Vishaka. And so this map shows, these maps show income across the county. So the one on the left shows income ranges, where the blue is in that $0 to $50,000 range, and then that orange and red is $75,000 or more. The map in the center shows high concentrations of low-income households in the county, with the darkest areas being the highest concentrations. And then the map on the far right is the same data, but in a dot density format. So these are the actual concentrations of low-income households in the county. Next slide, please. And then to further our understanding of the intersections of these protected demographics, we did a series of intersection maps. So the map on the left shows our environmental justice population, that is racial and ethnic minorities, as well as low-income households. And this is the top 10 percentile for all three of those groups together. So the top 10 percentile for racial minorities, for ethnic minorities, or low-income households. And the map on the right, if you're familiar with our communities of concern map, this is a replication of that, showing where the intersection of these communities are and where there are more than one high concentration of a particular characteristic. You can see areas like Wabama and the university, East Tampa have communities with eight or nine characteristics that address this. Next slide, please. To further demonstrate our compliance with Title VI and related non-discrimination authorities, we took a look at how we conduct community engagement and how we facilitate community partnerships, as well as how we provide access for people with limited English proficiency and people with disabilities. These are detailed further in this report on our processes in place and what we can do to further access on these bases. In addition, FTA requires us to provide a demographic breakdown on the basis of race and ethnicity for all of our advisory committees to the TPO, and that breakdown is provided in this report as well. You may remember taking that survey a bit ago, and we've also provided information on income, gender, disability, and other characteristics to help better understand how representative of the community our decision-making bodies are. Next slide, please. Another major component of Title VI and non-discrimination is looking at how we evaluate equity needs and outcomes in our plans. Ensuring that no person is or group is denied the benefits of our plans and projects, but also that they're not disproportionately burdened by our plans and projects as well. And we use three primary tools to achieve this. One is GIS, of course, which is standard practice. You can see that in our TIP, in our LRTP, and other areas where the TPO has used GIS to create figures and maps showing the distribution of projects across the county. The Planning Commission has also done similar practices. The figure on the right shows property acre per value based on the residential security maps created by the Homeowners Loan Corporation. And this is one of the first instances where Plan Hillsborough has taken steps to try to elucidate the link between historical racism and modern outcomes. In addition, the TPO uses the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Model to evaluate the impacts of our long-range transportation plan on environmental justice communities, which are minority and low income. And measures in that include stuff like bus access, trail access, and others. In addition, we supplement these analyses with academic and organizational research. There's a significant body of literature coming out, especially now, on the link between historical racism and contemporary outcomes, but also community disparities generally. And so this is kind of how we look at, you know, how we evaluate our equity outcomes in our plans. Next slide, please. Another essential component of Title VI and non-discrimination is ensuring no one is denied participation in our plans, in our activities, in our programs. And environmental justice really takes this a step further and requires us to ensure that minority and low-income populations have an opportunity to participate in our programs, in our projects. We track the TPO and the Planning Commission track outreach effectiveness through 2 reports. The TPO uses the Public Participation Plan's Measures of Effectiveness report, which has a few measures of, you know, how many meetings we hold in environmental justice areas. The Plan Hillsborough annual report is the primary public engagement reporting mechanism for the Planning Commission. There's currently no measures or particular callouts to how public engagement is conducted to reach minority and low-income populations in that, but that represents an area where the agency can improve. Next slide. And then our last component of Title VI and non-discrimination component is looking at the organizational staffing and structure of our agency. And this section really outlines what the responsibilities are of the executive directors, of our civil rights officer, and our staff as a whole in ensuring compliance with Title VI and environmental justice. The executive director's responsibilities include overseeing the whole program. The civil rights officer is responsible for implementing the program, and staff is responsible for essentially ensuring that all members of the public are included in their projects and that they consider the distribution of benefits and burdens as a result of their planning processes. Next slide, please. And then to further demonstrate our compliance with Title VI and non-discrimination, we looked at how we've incorporated equity and these principles into the TPO's primary program areas. This includes the LRTP, the TIP, our systems and corridor planning processes, where you can see all the subtasks under there, public participation, regional coordination, and transportation planning management, which is our kind of our administration task. Next slide, please. And some highlights from the past 3 years on Title VI and environmental justice and equity work that we've conducted. The 2045 LRTP, for example, found the potential for disproportionate health and environmental impacts on environmental justice communities as a result of increased traffic being disproportionately increased in those areas. So they looked at a proxy of right-of-way widening and found that the majority of right-of-way acquisition occurred in EJ communities. The most recent transportation improvement program, we looked at the distribution of project miles by funding buckets, that is Real Choices When Not Driving, Smart Cities, etc., in low-income communities, in racialized communities, and ethnic communities first county-wide. And we provided figures and maps in that report relating to that. In the 2020 Vision Zero Speed Management Plan, we also used our Communities of Concern map from the 2018 plan to prioritize corridors for safety improvements and for Vision Zero programming. And the plan also established safeguards against inequitable enforcement practices and ensured cultural sensitivity in that as well. And then one of the big things, of course, that helped to lead to the creation of this plan was the resolution on racial justice that the Citizens Advisory Committee wrote and voted on and supported, and which was subsequently supported by the TPO board as a whole. Next slide, and I'm going to let Dana talk about how the Planning Commission has incorporated equity into their programming a bit.
Thank you. So yeah, I did a general survey inventory of equity work in Planning Commission programs. So I looked at the 4 comprehensive plans, the one for unincorporated Hillsborough County and the cities of Tampa, Temple Terrace, and Plant City. Looked at some the community plans and the livable communities element of the comp plan, and some special area studies, as well as some public involvement manuals, and just the whole agency as a whole. Next slide, please. So some highlights of the Planning Commission's efforts to incorporate equity and address equity. In the unincorporated counties comprehensive plan, they had a element dedicated to underserved communities. It's called the Economically Disadvantaged Groups element, or the EDGE element. And the entire element was dedicated to outlining how the Planning Commission complies with Title VI and other related laws. In the 3 cities comprehensive plans, they, which by the way, all 3 were recognized by the American Planning Association for incorporating sustainability and working towards sustainability. But all 3 plans identified policies that did prioritize underserved communities in nearly every element for different things like capital improvement investment, special needs of affordable housing for specific populations like the elderly community and communities with disabilities. So did find those kinds of policies in almost every element in all 3 comp plans. The Ybor City Vision 2020 Master Plan update was a special area study. It was initiated by a community group, the Ybor City Development Corporation, to ensure that the Ybor City growth vision is guided by the local community. And the Brandon Corridors and Mixed Use Centers pilot project identified mixed use corridors to improve bicycle and pedestrian and transit access and generate dense walkable communities and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So those were some of the highlights from the Planning Commission.
And I'll talk a little bit about our framework for equity that we developed. You know, you kind of saw how the TPO and the Planning Commission have incorporated the principles and requirements of Title VI, environmental justice, into our planning processes. But what's the next step? You know, Title VI provides a really great jumping off point, but it's inadequate to address the legacy of discrimination that this community and this nation has faced. And so really what Title VI focuses on is equality and distribution, specifically that no one is denied the benefits of our plans and projects. But one of the major shortcomings of Title VI and environmental justice is it fails to recognize the existing institutional conditions and the historical legacy that we come into as planners right now. And so there's a need for an acknowledgement and a recognition of the historic and current inequities that exist and the systems that uphold those inequities. And that has to inform how we distribute the benefits and burdens of our planning projects. You may have seen these other components of equity if you sat in on any presentations by Charles Brown from Rutgers. These were developed from an article on creating more just urban spaces by a researcher. And these other components are looking at the quality of interpersonal interactions and relationships between our agency and community members, examining how decisions are made and who makes them and who is involved. So the representation of our committees, who gets to be involved in the planning processes, and how those decisions are ultimately made, who has the final say. And then also a major component of equity is care and repair. So looking at the maintenance and upkeep of our public spaces, prioritizing projects to upkeep those spaces in our CIP, in our TIP, but also doing pro-social, pro-life enhancing projects above and beyond just looking at the distribution. So thinking about the TPO support of street murals. It's not something we have to do, but it is pro-social, pro-life enhancing, and it shows a degree of care in our community. Next slide, please. And so to really support and advance this framework for equity, particularly the component on recognition of the historical and current inequities we currently face, staff did a deep dive on the history of discriminatory planning in Hillsborough County. I won't get into significant detail here, but staff looked at the local, state, national law and politics throughout the early to mid 19th and 20th centuries related to Jim Crow and the advancement of planning practices at the federal, state, and local levels. We looked at public and private housing policies and markets. So the history of public housing projects, the Tampa Housing Authority, as well as private housing. So racially restricted covenants, the creation of the Homeowners Loan Corporation, and the residential security maps, and how that impacted mortgage lending and neighborhood investment over the years. Staff also did a deep dive in reviewing all the comprehensive zoning plans and comp plans for the local jurisdictions from 1941, when the first one was adopted for the city of Tampa, through the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Staff also did a deep dive and documented the history of urban renewal, both nationally and locally, and how that was played out in projects such as Maryland Avenue or the Scrub or the Riverfront or Ybor City. And we also documented the history of highway construction in Hillsborough County as well, and how national policies and comp plans influence the siting of those facilities, as well as the related impacts. Next slide, please.
So also to advance our definition of equity, part of that procedural justice component of our framework, we did a pretty thorough public engagement process for this non-discrimination plan update. It involved a survey that was available online and that we took into the field. So using the intersection maps that Josh showed you earlier, we identified some of those physical locations of underserved communities, and we took the survey to those communities. We stood on the street corners, we knocked on doors, and we got people to respond to this survey in those communities. And the survey asked about different access issues, access to different community elements like affordable housing, quality grocery stores, and things like that. So we asked people to rate their access to different community elements in these different communities. And we also asked about people's perception of discrimination, access discrimination. So how much interpersonal discrimination may have negatively impacted their access to the community elements, and how much systemic discrimination may have negatively impacted their access, to kind of get a feel of what people are experiencing and what they attribute those experiences to. And so that was the survey. We also dug a little deeper by doing some focus groups. We did 5 focus groups to make sure that we heard from these 5 demographics of underserved communities that you see on the screen: Black or African American, Hispanic or Latino, disabled people, low-income people, and the LGBTQ population. This was our oversampling technique to make sure, again, that we heard about the access issues of these specific communities. We also did a storytelling forum to gain some additional qualitative data about, again, access issues, to dig deeper into some of the trends of access difficulty, access discrimination, those kinds of things. And so we did both quantitative and qualitative analysis on the results of these methods, and using some of the themes that we discovered and some of the trends, we identified some we used it as a basis or foundation for some of the recommendations that we are proposing in the preceding part of the non-discrimination plan. Next slide. We wanted to go over some of the things that we heard during public engagement that specifically relate to ITS. So one thing that we heard is signal timing is an issue. One of our participants told a story about how much they enjoyed driving in St. Pete all the way from North Pinellas all the way downtown because the signal timing is so well timed. We heard a lot about construction and how road construction and different construction is a challenge to people getting around Hillsborough County. So one idea could be to use ITS to let drivers know about construction. Another common thing that we heard is people want to use apps to find different things, whether it be information about meetings or projects or things going on, or again, information about construction, or specifically, as you see here, applications to help disabled people find transportation services. People talked about how in other cities, they were easily able to open an app and find a ride share that was wheelchair accommodating. Another thing that we heard as a recommendation was message boards at bus stops with live information. People, one of the common themes that came out of our public engagement is that people find the HART bus system to be very confusing to navigate. So using ITS to help people utilize the bus system. And ramp metering was, again, something that came up in the responses to our public engagement. Next slide. So as I mentioned earlier, we used this public feedback to help inform some of these recommendations for advancing equity in the outcomes of our agency work, as well as internally some of the things that we can do to improve representation on staff and things like that. So between public engagement, some staff recommendations and staff feedback, as well as best practice research and the information that we learned when we did our history report and research, we came up with a set of recommendations. They're split out into these three main areas. We have a list of agency-wide and internal procedural recommendations. Then we also broke out some recommendations specifically to the TPO, and we broke out some specific to how to improve comprehensive planning for the Planning Commission. And Josh is going to go over some of those that are relevant to this committee. Next slide. I'm sorry. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the agency-wide and internal procedures that we're recommending. So things like improving hiring practices, like I mentioned, in order to increase the diversity on staff, and also increasing training, like cultural sensitivity training, training on how different demographics experience access around the county and some of their special needs, and also increasing consultant opportunities for people that live in underserved communities. We are looking to expand public engagement efforts and opportunities with traditionally underserved communities. And one of the things that came out of the public engagement, but also that staff really liked and seems to be gaining popularity in the transportation planning world is text blasts. So overall, leveraging technology, of course, with the pandemic and going virtual, a lot of people gave feedback that they really like the hybrid meeting format because they're able to access meetings and give public comment a lot easier from home, especially underserved people who work 2 or 3 jobs or have children. So using so hybrid meetings, getting the word out to people virtually has been pretty effective. Like I said, the text blasts and standardizing, putting all of our recordings of meetings on YouTube for transparency and access, and improving intergovernmental coordination with some of the agencies that have more of an ability to impact some of the things that we heard, like affordable housing and minimum wage issues, things like that. Next slide.
I'll talk a little bit about the recommendations that are coming out for the TPO. Obviously, these are still draft, but one of the big things was looking at how we evaluate existing transportation conditions and the impacts of our plans and projects on Title VI and environmental justice communities. So that includes stuff like working with partners to advocate for changes in the Tampa Bay regional planning model to produce more useful outputs for evaluating outcomes, looking at existing community conditions through reporting in the State of the System report and building on existing measures, conducting equity-related needs assessments for the long-range transportation plan, and considering the connection between historical discrimination and present-day conditions, and continuing to refine the methodology for measuring the distribution of benefits and burdens in our TIP and our LRTP. And to kind of use these recommendations and these measures to build to the second recommendation, which is to prioritize projects in Title VI and environmental justice communities and address the disparities or the needs found through recommendation 1. So continuing to prioritize equity in the LRTP and carrying those prioritization factors into the TIP, the next update. In the TIP, using equity criteria to prioritize projects as well. And that includes stuff like seeking verification from implementing agencies that they're identifying equity-related benefits for their candidate projects and that they've engaged with those communities and ensure that these projects meet community needs. And requesting that implementing agencies submit actions and measures that they're doing to prevent or mitigate displacement or gentrification that comes with infrastructure development, and other means as well. One of the big ITS related ones is as it relates to the Vision Zero program. We know that best practice research has shown that enforcement efforts often disproportionately impact low-income communities and people of color. And so we want to continue to further the Vision Zero program that we have and focus really on infrastructure and design policy and reducing and minimize the focus on enforcement. And some particular considerations out of that is the perception and impact of automated enforcement measures on low-income and minority communities. One thing I've heard, especially from Charles Brown, is that we have to consider that when we prioritize areas for automated enforcement, more often than not, the areas with the highest crashes are low-income and minority areas, and that's as a result of historical discrimination and those legacies and the inability of those communities to advocate or their lack of political power for safety improvements as it exists. And so we have to be cognizant of that history as we consider automated enforcement measures. Otherwise, we're going to look at the representation of the TPO board and the advisory committees, really the advisory committees, and then continuing to support multimodal transportation projects and agencies that implement them as well. Next slide, please. And that's really about it, y'all. Thanks for hanging with us. I'm happy to take, Dana and I are happy to take any questions and comments. And if you have any recommendations yourselves as it relates to ITS, we'd be happy to hear them.
Okay, I think we are kind of running out of time, but yes, if anybody has any comments, questions, go for it. From everyone? If no, then the meeting. Brian, you have some question?
I don't know if anybody has questions. I just had a comment that it was very good. They looked at it from the ITS point of view, especially in construction zones where it could be unsafe and people could know where to go, especially in niche areas. So I think there was something more to delve into that area.
Okay, yeah.
All right, y'all. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to present.
Thanks,
Yep,
Josh.
thank you.
Okay, and thank you, everyone. Then the meeting adjourned.
Can we move on to the agenda item? We're done with this.
Oh, sorry.
Is there any old business or new business that we need to talk about, discuss at this time? Anything from the committee? Nick, do you have anything to bring up?
No, I don't. Yeah, even though I think I can say meeting adjourned.
I guess we can. Johnny, I believe you're still there, but if someone can quickly check any comments that we need to address. I did see that Ed Alberton had left his contact information. If anybody has any questions, I can email his information to you and you can contact him directly. Also, we had some more suggestions for the, I believe we had some suggestions to leave for the Smart Cities Master Plan, and I will follow up with him on that. If not, Nick, I hand it over to you.
I just want to share one other thing that I mentioned earlier. The ATC MTB was announced. There's a NOFO out, and I believe that the award's up to $60 million this year. And the closing date for applications to be submitted is August 23rd. So we had a conversation at the Smart Cities Alliance meeting. It seemed as if a couple agencies had some ideas for projects they may want to submit. So if we want to coordinate an application, I think we should probably get started on that in the near future. As you know, TPO staff's always willing to help. If you need us to submit a letter of recommendation or anything like that, just reach out and we're happy to do that.
Cool, thanks, Johnny. You'll be hearing from us soon for a letter.
Cool, right, sounds good.
Okay, Johnny, I think what the Brandon or the Margaret, they all know that, right? That for that project. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I pinged Margaret earlier this afternoon to see what projects the city was going to come up with. She hasn't got back to me yet, but it seemed as if she was interested in submitting something, so I'll keep my eyes open for an email.
Okay, yeah, because I don't know those things. Other than that, is there any questions from committee members or any issues, any questions? If no, then the meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all. Thank you, Nick, and thank you, Johnny.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.